The first thing Ambassador Julian Kador learned about galactic statecraft was simple: truth shows up dressed as theater. The grander the stage, the heavier the makeup. By that metric, the Galactic Council's grand chamber, black glass and floating light, was a cathedral of performance. The obsidian floor didn't reflect so much as distort, gulping the glow of 1,000 hovering lumine orbs and spitting back warped silhouettes of power. Delegation pods circled the hall like pearls set in a crown, each grown from psycho-resonant bone harvested from gas leviathans long since hunted to myth. Julian walked the central causeway alone, footsteps soundless on stone that felt colder than vacuum. Silence pressed on his shoulders, a lab atmosphere, a slide under a microscope. The knot in his belly wasn't fear, not exactly, it was the old pack animal alarm that the Chimera program tried to cauterize out of him. The training killed hesitation, not instinct. Instinct noticed everything. His fingers brushed the cool disk in his inner pocket, a plain data puck, calm as a coin. It sent a faint buzz into his palm, ready. If this assembly turned, Contingency 9 wasn't a plan so much as a dare the species had written to itself. He passed the Scythian block. They made statues look sloppy, scaled, avian life figures wearing contempt like a uniform. Plumed crests rose and fell in choreographed disdain. High Counselor Kerr lounged on a chair manufactured to sit just a fraction taller than any other seat in the hall, petty geometry as policy. Small black eyes tracked Julian's approach the way a collector studies a rare insect, appreciative, predatory, bored. Kerr flicked 2 fingers. A nearby Silene Counselor, soft, translucent, light pulsing within like a thinking lantern, dimmed to a bruised purple and withdrew a pending motion. The jelly diplomat fumbled its own puck, quivered, and subsided. Power speaks loudest by never having to speak at all. A training proctor's voice rose from memory: weakness draws teeth. Indecision draws blood. Hesitation writes your epitaph. Julian filed the observation. Then he reached the podium. Cool stone under his hands. A human in a clean dark suit, nothing ceremonial, everything deliberate, addressing immortals who had spent millennia teaching one another how to talk without saying anything. Counselors, he began. He didn't need amplification. Breath control, projection, cadence, all tuned to cut through ceremonial air the way a chisel finds a hairline crack in marble. No oratory sugar, no velvet curlicues. A basalt tone. I stand here as an equal voice. No tremor. No bow. Earth has met your sovereign criteria. We keep your trade codes, acknowledge your borders, and bring our inventions and raw labor to the common table. We ask for recognition under the laws you wrote. He let silence taste the sentence. Most petitioners arrived dripping compliments and apologies. He offered granite. Across the chamber, Kerr's mouth twitched, curiosity or dislike, both worked. You claim order, Julian went on, turning slowly, letting multifaceted, lidless, and amphibian eyes meet his. You sell stability. What you maintain is stagnation dressed as peace. You ask us to throttle our fleets, to submit our science to committees designed to bury it in amber. The result is a museum of power where progress is an exhibit, not a practice. A soft shiver moved through the hall. This wasn't a guest speech. It was a structural critique. Humanity seeks partnership, not tutelage. Mutual respect, not quiet fear. He leaned in a fraction, enough to be felt but not seen. You think we are chaos. We think we are adaptation. You read ambition as threat. We read it as oxygen. He straightened, hands open on the podium's edge. We ask for fairness. We do not beg. Silence widened, clean, clinical, total. Orbs hummed. For a beat, the chamber resembled a painting. Then Kerr nodded once at the shadow behind his chair. Julian saw the signal and the red dot bloom on his chest in the same breath. Target paint. His mind, drilled to sort catastrophe faster than adrenaline, read the architecture as a circuit diagram, integrated thermal grid, decorative housings as emitters, capacity rated for hull breaches and micrometeor annihilation. Deniable. Elegant. Lethal. The world became a white spear. Energy rained from the dome in converging beams, a star's temper held in carved filigree. The podium didn't burn, it vanished, matter flipping stakes with an angry hiss. Obsidian underfoot went to glass. Shockwave and heat made a single, deafening word out of the air. Delegates tumbled from their pods like beads torn from a string. For anyone else, erasure. For Julian, impact, then the taste of copper. His suit, Sharonian silk steel layered over a non-Newtonian gel web laced with a parasitic emergency system only a desperate species would field, caught the cataclysm and did the one trick it was never licensed to do. The neuropiber sensed the biospike, emptied its reserve, and popped a stasis bubble around his body for less than a tick of a tick. Not a shield, an editorial note to spacetime, route the river around this pebble. Agony arrived late, rude and thorough. The bubble fell, reality snapped backboard and vengeful. He flew, skidded, stopped. Smoke trailed from his left side. Ribs became glass shards in a sack. Blood found his ear canals and nose with grim curiosity. To the room, the story was tidy, fragile mammal vaporized by a tragic system's fault. To Kerr, it was a tutorial in consequences. Alarms layered the air with red. Somewhere, a Silene's data puck skittered into a planter and flashed once like a forgotten fish. Grovik enforcers, big, grey, armored, boots built to sound like verdicts, shouldered through the chaos. Official purpose, secure the scene. Real purpose, confirm the corpse. Julian let his body go slack and his breathing shallow. His visor had coughed red. Thermal shunt, complete. Stasis field, empty. Structural integrity, 28%. Oxygen, 12 minutes. Opportunity hid inside the failure. Plans are most useful when they die loudly. He cracked one eye, just enough. The puck lay 3 meters away, reflecting firelight. Priority recalibrated, live long enough to steal the right thing. A Grovik leaned over him, breath like rancid protein bars dissolved in stimulant gel. Cooked, it grunted. Nothing left. Procedure, the squad lead snapped. Confirmation. The knife came out humming, Vero edge meant for finality. The blade plunged. He twisted, not heroic, just efficient, and let it bury itself in ruined shoulder plating. Pain flared like a new sun under his clavicle. His free hand slid, quick as a snake, palming the puck. Smooth. Cool. His. The Grovik realized its mistake half a beat too late. The knife stuck in silk steel and stiffened gel. That half-beat brought a grip. Julian crushed the nerve cluster at the brute's wrist, exactly where the anatomy chart had promised, until numbness seized the hand. His other palm found the boot sheath, pulled the diamond laminate, and drove it up through the soft hinge under the jaw. The body went silent against him, all weight, no decisions. Alive. Kill him, the leader barked. Julian ripped the Vero knife free from his own shoulder, shoved the corpse aside, and rolled behind a planter the size of a shuttle engine as plasma stitched the air he had just occupied. Ash dusted where an alien fern used to be. He stripped the first Grovik's sidearm with practiced theft, thumped the safety by feel, and popped up long enough to ruin the squad lead's knee. Heavy armor doesn't matter if joints don't cooperate. The leader toppled, his reflex squeeze turned the ceiling into slag and showered molten surprise onto his nearest ally. Julian ran at the third, stepped past a clumsy rifle swing that had confidence but no angle, and knifed the seam where neck met collar. The fourth got a pistol but less into the visor, then a quiet finish. He never looked at faces, faces were glue. He looked at paths. The chamber convulsed between evacuation and manhunt. Security split focus, protect the important, erase the embarrassment. In the argument, the human who should have been a scorch mark became a rumor moving through service corridors. He drifted into the bowels of the station, pipes and conduits singing a different, honest song. Air tasted like old metal and recycled oil. He let a bulkhead hold him up for a second, then 3, then none. Pain lived in his ribs and rented space in his left shoulder. He rerouted his comms through civilian junk relays and muted his broadcast footprint to a whisper. General Isolde Vela's face spilled from a coin-sized holo on his wrist, shock, then command seizing the wheel. Julian. We saw the spike. The live feed died. Reports said. They were optimistic, he rasped, mouth dry, words dragging over a throat salted with blood. It wasn't an accident. Kerr lit the fuse. Her eyes told calculus at speed. Stand down. Find a hole and breathe. Lockdown is hard, extraction harder. Wheel. No, he said, and heard how quiet his voice had become. They changed the rules in public. We answer in kind. Answer with what? Frustration cracked her tone. You're one operator. Our fleet is a fraction of theirs. They want you to lash out. Give Kerr the pretext and he cages us inside Sol for a century. Chimera was monstrous. We shut it down. There are no others. You're it. He had known he was first. He had not known he was last. The knowledge sat heavy, heavier than the suit, heavier than the blood drying against his ear. A bad miracle, walking. He cut the link before she could order him again. Alone. Disavowed by necessity, and freer for it. Contingency 9 wasn't for success stories. It was for this wreckage. He followed grainy mental blueprints through a half-lit warren to a quiet closet with a janitor sign nobody read. Behind a false panel lived a diplomatic cache keyed to his DNA. A hiss, a small case, a severant package, sterile medkit, ghostable microtools, a fat power cell, and a dense ingot that stole light from the room. Neutronium. Earth couldn't buy empires, but it could cede leverage. Credentials would already be revoked. So he went where revoked credentials were normal, a smuggler impound yard that smelled like ozone and unpaid bills. He limped toward a gyroscope-class light freighter held in bureaucratic purgatory. Its name, unpainted, the unsolicited opinion. A ship assembled from arguments and spare parts. Hands off my bad decisions, said a voice behind him. She was tall for a gyroscope, all elbows and competence, for black eyes arranged in two thoughtful pairs, hydrospanner balanced on one shoulder. She took in the shredded suit, the protective stance that tried not to jostle broken ribs, the way he kept his right hand free. 5 seconds to convince me not to test this spanner on your head. He didn't have the breath to fight all the time to be charming. So he opened the case, tossed her a piece of the future, and watched her upper left arm dip at the weight. Down payment, Julian said. I need off this station. Then I need to make several star systems reconsider their life choices. Her lower eyes narrowed, the upper set widened at the ingot. The galaxy had a wordless exchange rate for that grey metal. This is the kind of trouble that gets me spaced by a patrol, she said. Also the kind that pays for new engines. He let the silence make her decision for her. She broke first, mouth twisting. Fine. But bleed on my upholstery and I charge you extra, she said, jerking her horned chin toward the ramp. Name's Sabella. Strap in, word man. Let's go insult the right people. The unsolicited opinion clawed free of the station's gravity well under a fake garbage scow code and a pilot who flew like a dare. Inside, Julian cut away ruined cloth, sealed what he could, gritted through the rest, and slid the Silene's pack into the ship's unexpectedly robust core. What's the shiny coaster? Sabella asked, top eyes on stars, bottom pair on screaming diagnostics. Don't know. Yet. Silene encryption unspooled like poetry stitched to math. He peeled layers, cross-checked shell corporations from memory, and began to smile without humor as a map of money and secrets bled onto the screen. The council is a web, he said. Kerr is the spider. You don't swat a spider. You burn the threads until it falls. He highlighted a file. A Grovic counselor with a taste for laundered credits and gladiator blood sport stared back at them from the dossier. First thread, Julian said. Bull. Zabella's lower eyes brightened. The blood pit of Hesperos, she guessed. Please tell me we're not just going to blow it up. Of course not, he said, voice turning knife thin. We're going to practice guerrilla diplomacy. She snorted. That sounds expensive. Only for the right people. Her hands danced over the console. FTL spooled. stars stretched. "Buckle up," she said. "Here comes night." Hesperos didn't bother pretending to be anything but what it was, a planet that sold adrenaline by the liter. Neon brawled with rain on every surface. Holoads shouted in 1,000 dialects about prosthetic tendons, illegal boosters, and a signature cocktail that promised to erase regret for 6 hours. The sky was a bruise that never healed. Zabella nosed the unsolicited opinion into an unlicensed well where docking fees were a conversation starter, not a number. She stayed with the ship and had down payment. Scavengers smelled weakness faster than dogs. Julian traded the tattered diplomat suit for anonymous spacer gear and slid into the city's arteries, hugging the wet shade toward the underground where the blood pit pulsed like a second heart. He found Draan where champions are always found, alone with the work. The training room was bare on purpose. Victory lived in repetition, not decor. Draan moved with the patience of a glacier and the speed of lightning, forearms tracing overlapping arcs with serrated blades. Scales mapped old stories across his body in a language of pale scars. "The bet-in floors upstairs," Draan rumbled without looking. "You're late for losing credits." "I'm early for changing contracts," Julian replied. Draan turned. Up close, he was a wall with eyes. "I already have one. With ball." "A contract that buys ball palaces," Julian said evenly, flipping a projector into the air. The wall filled with numbers that even a brawler could read: funnels, skims, transfers. "He takes 70. He leaves you 30 and calls it generosity." The champion didn't move. The skin at his jaw tightened. "He lies." "Maybe," Julian said, soft enough to pass for sympathy. "Maybe he doesn't. But if you believed him, you wouldn't be clenching your top right fist hard enough to crack the grip." The fist opened, guilty and furious. Julian let the data speak: tournament revenues, sponsorships, broadcast rights, side bets, laundering routes. He finished with a final insult: Ball owned the trademark to the stage name that made Draan a god. The word, dragon, glowed on the wall like a brand iron. "Help me," Julian said, stepping closer. "I don't want your crown. I want his spine. I'll leave you the arena, the paperwork, the streams, everything he built on your bones. You keep your name. He keeps nothing." Draan stared at the proof until denial had nowhere to stand. Pride did not like cages. "What does your help cost me?" "A performance," Julian said. "The best you've ever given. And when I talk, you let me finish." The championship night arrived loud. The blood pit roared with gamblers and true believers, sand raked flat and hungry. In a skybox layered in armored glass and poor taste, Counselor Ball reclined like a carnivore at a petting zoo, rings gleaming, laugh loud enough to be rented out. Down on the sand, Draan fought ugly and beautiful at once. His opponent was bigger, metal threaded through muscle, a billboard for aftermarket violence. It didn't matter. Draan deconstructed him like a craftsman unscrewing bad furniture: block, parry, bind, break. The crowd surged to its feet for the killing blow. Instead, the champion planted both blades in the earth and turned away from his prey to face the skybox. "People of Hesperos," he called, voice wired into every speaker. Silence arrived as if by command. "You pay to see honest combat. Your lord does not know the word." On cue, every holoscreen in the arena snapped from blood-spattered Santa spreadsheets pared down to fury. Arrows showed the river of credits flowing not to fighters, not to arenas, but into the soft belly of Ball's off-world accounts. Julian had prepped the graphics for an angry drunk at midnight: simple, humiliating, final. The crowd understood theft the way fish understand water. Disbelief melted into rage. Booing turned into a crack in the air that became a riot. In the confusion, the doors to Ball's private vault opened for a team of very loyal gladiators with very short tempers and a human who didn't waste motion. Julian didn't steal. Theft was too small. He executed financial surgery. Funds evacuated Ball's network in a glorious stampede, out of shells and secrecy and into a transparent account marked with Draan's legal name, broadcast for the world to witness. Predatory contracts dissolved in public. Ownership of broadcast rights, arena title, and trademark filings migrated like birds who had finally remembered where home was. Ball did not die. He lived long enough to hear the crowd decide his value in real time. The guards guarding him decided they worked for the city now. That decision involved doors opening, knees bending, and rings vanishing. The first strand in Curse web snapped with theater. News feeds dipped and spun, replaying the numbers again and again, each loop a fresh slap. Isabella watched from the ship, legs up, a wrench spinning in one hand. "Elegant," she said into comms. "You didn't throw a punch." "The best weapons don't advertise," Julian answered, already bent over the Silene archive again. Ball was a vein. "Next we cut nerves." He threw a star map up. An ice-bitten asteroid bristled with dishes and guns. Curse relay. He routes his private orders through it. Blackmail, black ops, coordination. We take it, we own his past and his pulse. Isabella zoomed in, whistled through her teeth. Automated turrets, layered sensor fences, fast response drones. A frontal run is a cremation notice. "Not if the storm screams louder," Julian said, tapping a stellar weather overlay. "Ion front crossing the outskirts in 6 hours. Ride the wake, look like noise. You get me 90 seconds on the skin. I'll do the rest." 90 seconds are famous last words, she muttered, then grinned despite herself. "Strap in." The unsolicited opinion dove into an electric ocean. The cockpit filled with alarms that Isabella swatted aside like flies. She surfed particle waves with her whole body, forearms a blur, jaw set. 70 seconds, 60, that's the line. Any closer and we get a new sun inside the hull. Go. Julian ejected into vacuum, suit matte black and mean. Magnets kissed metal, boots clanged home. He ran a low profile across the hull, counting panels, ignoring pain until pain took the hint. The maintenance hatch yielded to a scrambler that lied confidently about authorization. Inside, cold corridors whispered with fan noise and duty. 2 Praetorians passed like a metronome. He removed the first without a sound, thumb and forefinger to a nerve at the base of the skull, weight gently lowered. The second came with a partner and a problem. Julian tossed a wrench down an intersecting hall, curiosity peeled one guard off. He dropped from a gantry on the other, choked him to absence, and cracked a helmet on a live conduit in the process. A tiny indicator went from green to red, localized alarm. Stealth died. Speed took the wheel. He ripped the conduit panel and slammed his captured knife into a regulator that hated knives. The pop became a flash, became a building-throated boom. Emergency bulkheads began an opera of doors. The station chose on fire over quiet. Guards ran toward procedures. Julian ran toward the core. It was a sphere, because of course it was, a suspended brain made of light and math, held in a magnetic cradle amid a cathedral of cooling systems. Most of the garrison had sprinted toward the explosion, enough remained to ruin his day. He didn't argue with them. He lied to the controls instead. Wearing a tech's badge he had borrowed without permission, he triggered a maintenance cycle. The core groaned down like a planet on a winch. He was already in the trench under the floor when a shielded port rotated to meet him. The puck slid into the slot with a click that felt like a verdict. Data poured. Not Silene files this time. Curse private hoard, leverage, threats, bribery maps, assassination invoices, stupid secrets that powerful people wrote down because they believed in locks. Download complete, the interface chirped, cheerfully unaware it had just redrawn a political map. Julian pulled the puck, then posted a single, petty bomb, a sanitized clip of one of Curse Bulldog's binging pre-FTL human soap operas, complete with crying at season finales. The Galactic Net loved nothing like humiliation flavored with nostalgia. While the guards scrambled to swat a storm of mockery, he moved. Pad north, he subvocalized. They're about to launch toys. The unsolicited opinion appeared like an insult, its lone cannon spitting enough fire to make sharpshooters duck. Julian ran a straight line to the ramp while the ship slid sideways like a dancer. He fell inside, Isabella yanked them up and out. The first fighter stitched empty space where they'd been. A second found only the storm. 2 rotations and an ocean of coffee later, encryption finally blinked. The archive sprawled across the console, obscene in scope. Zabella leaned in and whistled low. That's not just dirt. That's topsoil, bedrock, and a few extinct species. Dump it all and the galaxy burns, she said. Tempting. Fires don't aim, Julian said, voice roughened to rope. We aim. He sent 2 transmissions. The first was loud, an open invitation to High Council occur for a final negotiation at a dead trade platform in the Enoch system. The second was quiet and many, private notes to every other council member containing a sliver of their own file and a simple sentence, my biodata is the trigger on a dead man's switch. If I die, or if Kerr isn't held to account for attempted murder of a recognized envoy, the archive goes everywhere. Choose. He turned Kerr's web into a box and set the lock under his own heartbeat. Preparation was duct tape and spite. Zabella patched the half-ruined suit with ship plating that had ideas above its pay grade. It'll stop a punch, she warned, tightening a bolt. Maybe a slug. Energy? Don't get shot. He grinned without humor. Sound doctrine. The platform drifted like a ribcage. Kerr arrived with shine and soldiers, every line of his posture a sermon on control. Ambassador, he drawled, venom wrapped in etiquette. Have you come to beg? I've come to accept your surrender, Julian said, because sometimes the only winning move is to declare you've already won. Kerr laughed, brittle and loud. Somewhere on his aide's pad, messages multiplied, colleagues hedging, friends backing away, tallies changing color. The web sagged. 10,000 years of order, Kerr snapped, anger climbing out of its cage. We kept children from burning the galaxy. You kept yourselves in velvet and called it safety, Julian answered. The others see it now. And they are watching. The signal went wide. The council watched a man they dismissed refuse to kneel. Kerr drew an energy blade that promised neat endings. Julian hit a maintenance panel instead. Foam designed to eat hull plating roared from the ceiling in a white storm, fobbing visors and complaining loudly to armor. Praetorian stumbled and screamed as safety gear became the opposite. He ran. 2 guards chased. He slid under a dormant cargo claw, slapped a charge onto its control box, and dropped to the next level. When they followed, he hit the switch. The claw woke like a startled giant, grabbed one, swatted the other into the dark. He used the Grovik pistol like a shepherd, not a butcher, driving a cluster of armored guards onto a grated panel. A shot to a junction box and the docking clamps went feral. Magnetic surge slammed them to the deck, armor welded to floor by physics and bad luck. 2 remained, Kerr's better blades. They came as a pair, trained to be each other's second thought. He gave them ugliness, a knife in the seam, a tackle that turned into a throw, a throat strike that shut a question forever. Pain filled his left arm when a Vero edge split the patch plate and bit him to the bone. Pain had to stand in line. Kerr stepped forward, duelist perfect. Julian was all bad angles and breath that burned. The cut across his ribs lit his vision with static. Kerr tilted his head, saw victory, and committed. Julian stumbled in, too close for elegance, and turned the lunge into a clinch. Wrist, twist, drop. The blade clattered. The flat of Julian's knife whispered against Kerr's neck long enough for a camera to fall in love. I won't kill you, he murmured, voice low enough to shiver through the broadcast. Martyrs are useful. We're erasing you. He stepped away. Engines flared in the distance, council ships coming to collect not him, but the mess. Kerr stood alone, wet-eyed with rage, as messages on his aide's pad turned from pleas to instructions. Somewhere, a security feed captured a battered human turning his back on a toppled monarch. Back aboard the unsolicited opinion, Zabella sealed the wound on his forearm with a hiss and an insult. You make spectacular chaos, she said, unable to keep the admiration out of the sarcasm. Drahan sent a bonus. Says Ball's new job title involves a bucket. General Vela's face arrived carrying exhaustion and relief. Ambassador, she said, and the word had new bones in it. The Council's tearing itself into pieces trying to reassemble a charter. They're asking for us at the table. For you. Earth Command's guidance is simple, do what you judge best. Julian allowed himself a small, real smile. Permission had always been a formality. But it felt good to hear the leash hitting the floor. He glanced at the growing bar of neutronium Zabella was hauling with an antigrave puck. Where to next? Her grin showed teeth. Point. The ship leaned into the future. The archive was a galaxy's confession booth. Bribes, assassinations, secret treaties, petty obsessions, High Councilor Kerr had kept insurance on everyone worth blackmailing. Julian sifted through the filth with the calm of a surgeon, eyes hollow but steady. Zabella leaned against the console, for eyes flicking between the screens and him. That much dirt could bury planets, she muttered. Drop it all at once and the galaxy goes nova. Julian shook his head. Nova burns everything. We don't need fire. We need precision. He pulled up a new target, the relay on a frozen rock that carried Kerr's encrypted orders, a nervous system running through cold metal veins. They had already gutted Ball's finances. Now, they would cut communication, silence the spider before it spun another thread. The ion storm had been only the beginning. Now their ship, patched together with scavenged parts and ambition, slid through space like a thief. Zabella's piloting had the grace of a gambler betting with her last coin, reckless but careful enough to win. Julian, patched into painkillers and stubborn wool, prepped for another infiltration. The comm relay had teeth. Automated turrets blinked red, drones orbited like angry hornets, and Praetorian guards patrolled its sterile halls. But the storm's residue cloaked their approach, sensor ghosts masking the Opinion's presence. Zabella gritted her teeth as she threaded them into the shadow. 80 seconds, she warned. Don't make me come after you. Julian launched into void, boots kissing hull, hands already reaching for seams in metal. He moved like someone who had rehearsed the architecture of death 1,000 times in a simulation. The hatch cracked open, and he vanished inside. The corridors smelled of coolant and sterilizer. Julian ghosted through them, his broken body running on borrowed adrenaline. He took down guards with quiet, brutal efficiency, a nerve pinch here, a chokehold there, a stolen knife sliding between armor plates. Stealth was math, and he knew the equations. At the core chamber, he saw the prize, a massive sphere suspended in magnetic fields, humming with secrets. Guards ringed it, but chaos followed him like a shadow. He tripped an overload, sending alarms shrieking and doors slamming. The guards scattered. Julian slid into the trench below, waiting as the core descended into its maintenance cradle. The puck slotted into the port, lights flickering like a heartbeat. Data poured in, Kerr's private vault. Blackmail files, assassination orders, incriminating correspondences. Enough to topple empires. He smiled, cold and sharp. Then, just for insult, he leaked one trivial file, an ally's embarrassing obsession with old human soap operas, straight to the galactic net. Chaos spread faster than plasma fire. North pad, he whispered to Zabella. I'm done here. She came screaming in with the ship, cannon fire scattering defenders. Julian sprinted, lungs tearing, but he made it aboard just as the first fighters scrambled. Zabella yanked them to FTL with a grin that was half madness. 2 sleepless cycles later, Julian finished decoding the last locks. The archive unfolded like a poisoned flower. He didn't dump it. Instead, he stitched it into a weapon, a dead man's switch tied to his own biometrics. If he died, the whole galaxy would choke on truth. He sent an open invitation to Kerr for a final negotiation in the Enoch system. And private messages to every other counselor, their own sins, sampled and undeniable, with one promise: if I fall, you fall with me. The spider was trapped in its own web. Zabella patched his suit again, bolting scavenged armor plates onto the ruined silk steel weave. This will stop fists. Maybe slugs. Energy beams? Pray. Julian flexed against the weight. Perfect. Let them see what they did to me. The derelict trade platform drifted like a skeleton in space. Kerr arrived with soldiers gleaming, his arrogance still intact. Ambassador, he sneered, stepping down the ramp, come to beg. Julian's reply was ice, I've come to accept your surrender. The duel was inevitable. Guards swarmed, foam cannons hissed, cargo claws snapped to life. Julian fought with feral calculation, turning machinery and physics into allies. He broke their formation, scattered their numbers, and left Praetorians pinned under their own armor. Then it was Kerr himself, blade in hand, duel-schooled and dangerous. Julian was battered, bleeding, armor shredded, but desperation was its own weapon. Pain slowed him, but hatred guided him. They clashed, sparks flying. The blade carved across Julian's ribs, scorching flesh and fabric. He staggered, vision swimming. Kerr lunged for the kill. Julian stepped in instead of away. Twisted the wrist. Let the blade fall. Pressed the flat of his knife to Kerr's throat. The cameras caught everything, the mighty viceroy disarmed, trembling, a human's blood dripping onto his uniform. I won't kill you, Julian whispered into his ear, for the council to hear. I'll erase you. He stepped back, leaving Kerr exposed, humiliated, and broken. The broadcast spread faster than light. Allies abandoned Kerr in real time, messages cascading across his aide's datapad. The spider's web collapsed strand by strand, until all that was left was the spider himself, trapped. Julian turned his back and walked away. To the galaxy, the image was unforgettable, a wounded human leaving the fallen ruler of 1,000 years standing alone. The old order was over. Back aboard, Isabella sealed Julian's wounds with a hiss and a curse. You've made the whole galaxy choke on its own secrets, she said, almost proud. General Valer's holo filled the cabin, voice steady but eyes weary. Ambassador, the council is in ruins. They want Earth at the table. They want you. Command says the leash is off. Do what you judge best. Julian allowed himself a smile. For the first time, it wasn't bitter. Isabella hefted the growing stack of neutronium bars. So, word man, where to next? Julian looked out at the stars, infinite possibilities burning. Anywhere we want. The opinion banked and leapt into the void, a single stubborn spark racing into the dark. The galaxy didn't change in a day, but in the weeks that followed, the tremors never stopped. On Hesperos, Drahan's name replaced balls on every arena wall. The crowd roared for a champion who finally owned himself, and Ball scrubbed floors with a sponge instead of skimming credits with a stylus. Across a dozen systems, smugglers whispered about the human who made financiers bleed without firing a shot. To ordinary people, miners, farmers, freighter crews, Julian Kador became a rumor with teeth, the ghost who humiliated the council. Inside the council chambers, the silence was different now. Delegates who once ignored humanity began addressing Earth's envoys with careful words, measuring every syllable. Kerr's chair still stood at its inflated height, but it was empty, a monument to arrogance undone. The council fractured into factions, scrambling to protect their own secrets, each one terrified of the files Julian still held. On the unsolicited opinion, life felt both smaller and wider. Isabella spent her time installing upgrades, her grin sharp every time a new system hummed to life. Paid for by stolen shame, she quipped, patting the ship's bulkhead. Julian healed slowly, though pain had become just another voice in the room. He poured himself into the archive, not to destroy but to choose. Each leak was a scalpel cut, one corruption exposed, one tyrant weakened, one chain broken. The files turned into a weapon no fleet could match, fear of truth. At night, in rare quiet, he thought of Earth. The generals, the programs, the endless calculations of survival. They had built him from desperation, and he was the only one who survived. For a long time, he believed that meant he was doomed to walk alone, carrying all the weight. But now, watching Isabella curse at a strip bolt or listening to Drahan's booming laughter across a comlink, he realized survival was only half the story. The other half was choosing what to do with it. General Valer contacted him again. This time her face carried less fear, more resolve. The Council is begging Earth to mediate a new charter, she said. They want stability, and they know you can shatter them if they stall. Earth stands behind you, Julian. No leash, no limits. Just, be careful what you build. He gave her a rare, genuine nod. Careful is relative. But I'll try. When the holo winked out, Zabella raised an eyebrow. So you're the most powerful man in the galaxy, word man. Plans. Julian considered. He saw endless stars, and everyone was an opportunity, to unseat another tyrant, to ignite another riot, to rewrite a rule written to keep humanity small. But beneath the fire, there was something steadier. We built something better, he said at last. Not just for Earth. For everyone they'd strangled with their order. Zabella chuckled. Ambassador, revolutionary, philosopher. You're getting insufferable. She pointed at the stars outside. Pick a direction. Let's go give someone an unsolicited opinion. The ship leapt forward, engines burning brighter than before. Julian leaned back in the seat, body aching but spirit sharpened. For the first time since the Chimera program carved fear out of him, he felt something deeper than survival. Hope. Moral closing note. Power built on lies eventually collapses under its own weight. Truth, even in the hands of the broken, can break empires. Humanity's strength was never just survival, it was the refusal to accept cages, and the courage to build something freer in their place.